Hello and welcome to our second special, The Nutritionist for Sheep. I'm Marianne Fessenden, Webinar and Academic Coordinator for Agricultural Modeling and Training System, or AMTS. For those of you unfamiliar with our company, we were founded to develop commercially available software based on the Cornell Net Carbohydrate and Protein Systems, CNCPS. Cattle nutrition model. We specialize in program and educational support to nutritionists feeding dairy and beef cattle as well as sheep and goats for meat and milk production. We pride ourselves in not only offering software, but providing the knowledge behind the successful feeding of ruminant animals. To assist nutritionists around the globe, we've created the Nutritionist Webinar series. These monthly webinars join experts, researchers, and teachers with nutritional practitioners in a forum designed to present ideas and practices coupled with opportunities to ask questions with a global audience. We pair with co-hosts in other countries or with differing experiences to strengthen our question period in an effort to broaden our listeners' perspectives. As a service, we save recorded webinars on our website as archived recordings and podcasts. They can be found on the Webinars tab by year and knowledge base under Podcasts. While you are listening today, if you have any questions, please type in the Q&A or chat window. At the end of the webinar, we will answer yours and others' questions. We are honored to host Dr. Philippe Hassoun as our presenter today. Dr. Hassoun was born in Dakar, Senegal. He received his master's in animal production at Tours, France, and completed a doctorate in animal science at the University of Montpellier, too, in France. He has worked in field research on dairy cattle in the tropics in the Reunion Island from 1994 to 2000. His work since then has focused on research in dairy, sheep nutrition, and production systems, working to update sheep requirements under the French INRAE nutrition systems. Philippe is a contributor to Feedopedia website on ruminant nutrition. Please enjoy his talk on sheep nutrition in the French INRAE system.
So, thank you, Marianne. First of all, I have not to present because you did it already. And I would like to thank Marianne and this team of MTS for giving me the opportunity to present the French experience in dairy sheep. And before to start, I want also to pay tribute to my colleague and friend, François Bocquier, who was a professor of the high school, agronomic high school of Montpellier. And he was more or less the man who worked on dairy sheep before I come. He did a lot of work, and most of the basis of the nutrition system in dairy sheep is thanks to him. So I don't want to have a very technical speech today because 1 hour is very short. And I propose the plan you can see now. I will just draw a rapid situation in the European Union. Then I go to the French, the France situation, and then to the dairy sheep nutrition. I will with a special focus on the main period for this kind of animals, and then a conclusion. First of all, let's see in the European Union what is the situation that can be changed, but what is the situation for the dairy sheep. You have in this figure the main the countries with the main number of dairy sheep, which is still Romania, Greece, Italy, Spain, France, and Bulgaria, and other countries are with very less animals. France, you can see, is at the 5th rank. And if you, sorry, in these animals, in these countries, there are a lot of breed of these animals. I'll just show you some examples for, let's say, the main we can encounter in these countries: Lacon and Basco Bernese in France, Asaf and Manchega in Spain, Sard in Italy, and Comisana, Su and Chios and Karagunico in Greece. But there are also a lot of other breeds in these countries. Regarding now the dairy sheep production in the same countries as the previous, we can see that in 2019, Greece was the first producer of milk in the European Union, followed by Spain, Italy, Romania, and France. And this situation also is the result of several systems, because in many countries they have a lot of dairy sheep with small production. And in this figure, you can see that the most productive animals in these 6 countries, you can find it in Spain, and with the breeds I showed you previously, in France, and then Greece, Italy, and the other countries. This is because they have done for a long time a very strong selective system to improve the production of the animals. So dairy sheep milk in the European Union is mainly located in the north part of the Mediterranean basin, with Spain, France, Italy, Greece, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey also, and Israel also. But most of the milk production in these countries is transformed, because it's difficult in these countries, this region, to keep the milk in the good condition. But it is mostly transformed into cheese. And the third most producing cheese in the European Union are, as you can see, Italy, Spain, and France. And they represent about 90% of the cheese produced in the European Union. Concerning this production, we have to keep in mind that a kilogram of cheese depends also on the dry matter of the cheese. So you may have a lot of fresh cheese in kilograms just because it's fresh and not dry, as we can see in Manchego, for example, or other cheese. So just to relativize the values you can see. If I go now in France, in our system, we have about 550 dairy farms. Amongst them, we have 600 organic farms. This number is increasing progressively, with 1,510,000 dairy sheep in this system, producing 288 million of milk. And as I told you previously, most of the farmers most of the milk, is transformed into cheese, either in the industry or at the farm level. It depends on the situation of the farmers. And the 3 main cheese we can encounter in France are Roquefort, I think maybe you must know. Also Irati is another one from, I will explain where we can find it, and Brochu. These 3 cheese are the main cheese exported. So if we have a look in France now, just the map of the country, we have 3 main regions. They are characterized by three points. First, the breed we can encounter. So in the Roquefort area, we have the Lacon breed, the Lacon dairy breed, because in Lacon we have 2 different breeds, one for milk and one for meat. This is the Lacon breed for milk. We can encounter in this red circle in the south of the Massif Central. It's a central mountain in France. This is very located in this place now. Then you have in the Pyrenean region, close to the mountains, you have 3 breeds in this place: Manèche redhead and Manèche blackhead, and the Basco-Béarnaise I showed you previously. And this region and this breed produce the also Irati cheese. And the third one is located in the island in Corsica, with 1 breed which is coarse, and they produce Brochu, which is the special cheese of this place. And in these 3 regions, we have 3 DPO, which we will see after APO in France, the APO. And DPO is delimited, sorry, I forgot the name. well, it's a delimited, protected region. So the milk cannot be produced out of this region. It cannot be produced with other breeds, and they have to follow a certain number of rules in nutrition and also in the production system. This is the main one. So it exists since now for a long time, particularly for Roquefort. This is a system which is well organized in the three parts of the country. Milk is mainly collected by the dairy industries every day or every 2 days in very different conditions. I show you two pictures. And it's transformed into cheese or sometimes yogurt or other kind of cheese with no DPO appellation. Or in some farmers who don't belongs to the APO area, they can transform their own milk, mainly in cheese also, and also in yogurt, or sometimes as a drink milk. In these three GPO areas, the milk is regularly controlled by the industry at the tank level for microorganisms, bacteria, and also listeria, and so on. And in the particular region, especially in Roquefort, because in the two other regions, silage is not allowed. In Roquefort, the farmers using silage are collected separately in order to avoid any contamination of the milk with salmonella or listeria. And they are also regularly controlled for this kind of microorganism. Also, this is three, the farmers, as they have the possibilities to be controlled regularly for the individual production. We have two different systems. There are official one, which concern the farmers included in the genetic program, and another one called simplified, which is not included in this genetic program. And all of the farmers are not they have not their animals individually controlled. So for the first case, they have about, I think, 8 to 9 control over the full lactation of the animals. And they can have you can see the pictures, and they can have the milk yield and the milk composition of each animal. Also, this system, I told you, is well organized. They have a specific organization for genetic improvement for all breeds I've shown you. They have also a lot of organization for training the farmers for also various technical advices in nutrition, reproduction, farm structure, milking, and so on. The farmers are well accompanied by this one. And we have also national organizations like CNBL, which is National Committee for Dairy Use, which include a lot of different organizations, like the technical from the field, the research, and also the training farm. That include all these organizations, and we have for the dairy sheep 2 agricultural college located in these two places. One is in Saint-Afrique, in the Roquefort area, and the other in the Pyrenean area. And these two farms, there are also farms in Corsica, but in these two farms, they teach specially the students for dairy sheep production, the local dairy sheep production. And all these organizations are also managed by administrative organizations, including the farmers, the dairy, the industry, the researchers, and so on. So you see all is very well controlled and well supported. Concerning the research system, we have INRAE, which now it's called INRAE. It has changed last year, which means National Research Institute for Agriculture, Food and Environment. And this structure includes an experimental farm. You see the pictures at the bottom right, called Lafage, where the farm is dedicated to conduct researches in two kinds of breed. One is Roman for sheep, for meat, sorry. But the other one, the most important one, is Lacan, Dairy Lacan, and established for more than 50 years now. And they did a lot of work on genetic, mainly genetic, and then also nutrition, udder health, the milk quality, and now they try to introduce also the milk, the dairy milk system. And the farm is located more or less in the center of the Roquefort area and close to the teaching farm. So this is the general presentation of the system. All the farmers are supported and helped. Now the main characteristic of the breeding and the rearing system, mainly in these three parts. It's less in Corsica, but mainly in the other area. The reproduction is conducted with we say now in France animal insemination, but in fact it's artificial insemination with fresh semen, which can be introduced in the female. It can be within 10 hours. And this is a big problem. It's very intensive problem at that time. Or they use the natural matting if artificial insemination doesn't work. So they have two, and they have also more or less two main periods. The first one is for the dairy ewes the adults, and the other one for the ewe lambs. So they have two separated reproduction periods. More or less, the reproduction period is between spring and September. It can start just now in April, May, and finish in September, October. And consequently, the milk production is mainly concentrated in autumn and winter. During this period, because the climate condition, the animals are managed indoors, and except in the Pyrenean region and Corsica, where the weather is less strong, so the animal can go out and graze very often. And generally in the system, the first month of lactation of the animals is dedicated for the lambs. This is the suckling period, which can be 25 to 35 days. Afterward, they are weaned. And then the full milking period will start. The renewing lambs, as I told you, the first month they are fed with the mother, and generally the first lambing occurs around 1 year old. They are very young in the three main areas, except in one case in the managed blackhead, where they are conducted to lamb at 2 years old, but mainly the other is 1. And the male lambs in the Roquefort area, they are sold to fattening system and then slaughtered afterward. Or for Corsica and Pyrenea, they are sold and slaughtered after weaning. So I will present rapidly the three main regions. Roquefort area, I gave you some pictures to illustrate the system. It's now partly located into the World Heritage List in the UNESCO. They call the coast and the 7 Mediterranean agro-pastoral cultural landscape because it's very specific, special areas with traditional system. and is located, as I told you, in semi-mountainous region with about 800 to 900 meters above the sea level, sometimes a little higher, with a continental climate, which is it can be very dry in summer and very cold in winter. And this system, the feeding system is, you can understand, is based mainly on preserved forage, principally hay and silages, and then pasture as soon as the weather allows the animal to go out. This pasture is during spring and autumn. The farmers use mainly alfalfa or lucerne, alfalfa species, and then also gramineous like ryegrass and cocksfoot and so on. And they use also natural or improved pasture, with clovers and chicory, which is more recent, and other legumes. The concentrate used are mainly for the energy. Concentrate is produced by at the farm level with barley, wheat, or corn, and they buy the dehydrated alfalfa, sugared beet pulp sometimes, and mainly the protein source, which is comes from the industry, the feed industry. In the Pyrenean region area, it's close to the Pyrenean mountain that I showed you previously. You have some pictures of this region. And here, the feeding system is based mainly on forage also, but with a bigger part dedicated to pasture. They have hay. They don't have silage anymore because it has been recently forbidden for the AOP areas. And in this place, some farmers practices the transhumance. That means during the summer, they bring their animals from the plain to the upper side of the mountain. And they use also alfalfa, more or less the same forages. And they use mainly corn, which is more traditional than barley, and otherwise the same concentrate than the other regions. In Corsica, it's a mountainous island. There are some pictures also to show you the situation. The feeding system also is mainly based on the forage and pasture because the climate, the weather allows it to use the pasture for almost all over the year, and they use hay. The forage is mainly fescue, which is more adapted to the Mediterranean conditions. And they have in the lowland some irrigated pasture to produce the forage for the animals. And otherwise, the concentrate are more or less the same as the others. So, in the conclusion of these three systems, they are mainly based on the utilization of forages as hay, silage, or pasture, with a very limited amount of concentrate because it's a rule of the DPO in the free system. They don't have to consume a lot of concentrate. And also they have some rules. They can't buy more than a certain amount of feed, out of the farm. And in general, the level of concentrate in the diet is lower than 35%. It's a little bit more in Corsica because they have less surfaces for the animals, so they have to use more concentrate in this condition. Animals are all group fed with very wide milk yield variability. It's a big number of animals with the two lambic dates, as I told you, multiparous and primiparous. And sometimes the farmers can physically constitute two groups in the barn, but it's not very common. This is just to show you some very simple figures of the numbers of farmers, number used for in the farm. You know, it's quite a lot. The milk production, which changed because mainly the genetic evolution was different. the level of milk produced and the income, and you will see the income can be very high in these three areas. It's also true in the other places in France. The milk, the dairy sheep milk is sold at a high price. So many farmers are trying to change their mind, and they change from meat to milk production because they earn more. Most of the work the results and the recommendation I will present, they deal with the Lacan breed because, as I told you, the research has been done for more than 50 years ago now, and mainly on the Lacan breed. More of the knowledge we have comes from these animals. This is also the more important in numbers in the country. We have this, I told you, the experimental farm, which is located in the more or less in the area, center of the area. And a lot of work have been done in the genetic development for increasing the milk yield, the milk composition, the udder shape, the udder health, milking practices, etc., etc. So the dairy sheep nutrition in France the strategy is always established according to the farm structure, the number of the animals they have, and it's based on several years researches we have done. More recently, the last 10 years, because the feed cost increased, because the people want the farmers to reduce the pollution. It's very common in France, and not only in France, because pollution with nitrogen, pollution with methane, etc. So the farmers are trying to be more autonomous for the feed, and they try to be better efficient for their diet. And INRAE is also working on this subject now. And during the last 10 years, some industries have developed electronic devices, and they have developed also concentrate feeders, automatic concentrate feeders for individual animals. I will present you some results about this. So let's go now to the main period for the dairy sheep nutrition. First of all, we can start with the artificial insemination, with the period which is very important because it will condition the number of animals in milking production later. Then you have the end of gestation, the end of pregnancy, which is very important. I will insist on. And the lambing period and weaning, and then the full milking period, which is the more important for the farmers. So this is the main aspect I will focus my talk: the reproduction, end of gestation, and beginning of lactation, because it's a very special period. The full milking period, the pasture period also, you will see why. And I will also finish my talk on rearing ewe lambs, because these animals are often neglected. So let's go now to the reproduction period and the flushing. The flushing, this is the specific attitude when the farmers increase the level of energy in the diet about 3 to 4 weeks before the artificial insemination, and 3 or 4 weeks after, until 3-4 weeks after. The objective is to increase the energy of the diet to stimulate the fertility of the animals. And but for doing that, they have to reduce. Previously, they reduced the energy level of the diet to create this, what we call this rebound effect, which will stimulate the ovulation rate. They have no forage. In this period, they should not provide forage with high soluble nitrogen or pasture with high soluble nitrogen because we know that they may have some negative aspect on the embryonic period. I just give you an example. I don't want to describe all. An example of what we do in the Lacan area, what kind of diet we produce at this time. Then, during this period, it's also important not to change the diet very abruptly, because this is the particular period when the embryo is settled in the uterus, and the diet must be very stable in this change. We should avoid, as I told you, high soluble nitrogen in the diet because it will increase the risk of early embryonic losses. And then after the first 100 days of gestation, the animals are mainly at the maintenance level. So this is the period where generally the farmers do not care a lot about these animals because they have no specific requirements. But anyway, it's the time for the adult to finish to recover their body reserve in order to reach the 3 to 3.5 body reserves for the Lacan breed at lambing. And in the Lacan system, because the ewe lambs are mated very early, at about 7 to 9 months, it's also the time for this kind of animal to continue their growth, which is not finished, in order to reach more or less 75–80% of the adult weight at lambing. In this case, we should not, or we should avoid to underfed or overfed the animals, because we may have possible consequences, positive or negative. It's not simple to resume that on the development of the fetus. At the end of the gestation, let's say the last 6 weeks and the beginning of lactation, this is a crucial period because it's a continuous one. The ewes at this time must be fed with the same forages as they will receive in the lactation period. We should not modify a lot the diet during this time. So the farmers has to foresee the diet from, let's say, the period of gestation to the beginning of the lactation. At this period, the energy requirement increased a lot, very rapidly, because the last week of the gestation is mainly dedicated to the fetus growth and not to the mother. And also the energy demand will be very high for the fetus and after lambing for the milk production. The last week or sometimes the last day before lambing, the voluntary intake of the mother decrease a lot, so they can't eat the energy or the protein amount they need. And for this reason, we should provide to the animals good forage and good diet, intake diet. In this small graphic, just to give you an idea of how the net energy demand will change or increase during the last week of the gestation and the beginning of the lactation. It's very important, and you can see in a very, very short time. So we have done some measure about intake in last period of gestation. These kind of measures are not very frequent even in the literature. It's quite difficult to manage. But this is an example in Lacan, but we found also more or less the same shape, the same pattern of the intake in other breeds like Manchega in Spain and other countries. In fact, the intake of the animals in these figures, we have the day before lambing at the bottom and the voluntary intake of the diet of 2 kinds of animals with ewes bearing one or single or twin lambs in two successive years. How do we say the decrease of the intake occurs mainly sometimes 7 or to 10 days before, even sometimes the few days before the lambing. And then it will increase after lambing. So the variation of intake is very wide, and for this reason, we have to feed the animal with forages of high digestibility and ingestibility, with a good nutritive value, especially for the last 2 weeks of the gestation. Concentrate providing energy and protein. Mainly for the protein, you have to use rumen bypass protein, because as the animal can't eat as they could, the development of the microbe in the rumen is less than expected, so they cannot produce or provide to the animal protein, microbial protein. So we have to bring to the animal this protein through rumen bypass protein. Also to sustain the very high development of the fetus the last week, and the synthesis of the colostrum, and the fact that the intake decreased very quickly the last week. And this is very critical period for the ewe. It's very important. So we stress, this is my talk, it's important to change a lot the diet for the last period of gestation until the beginning of lactation must be more or less the same. The concentrate amount must be increased progressively, no very abrupt change in this for this kind of the feed, and providing also very good quality forages to compensate the limited development of the microbe because the lower intake of the animals. Then during the suckling period, once the animals have lambed, during the suckling period, the first month I told you is dedicated only for the lambs. So the mother are milked only once a day in the morning in general, to eliminate the excessive milk not consumed by the lambs, and this and also to adapt the animals to the milking parlor. All the milk not consumed by the lambs is either used for the artificial rearing of the other lambs, or is washed, because in the Roquefort system, or also in the others, we can't use this milk for production. This is also the particular period for the farmer to control the udder health, to rapidly detect some mastitis who can occur, and check also the evolution of the body condition score, of the body condition of the animals. What the weaning has been done, the dairy ewes enter in the full milking period. That means they are milked twice a day. This is the rule in all the 3 areas, milk twice a day, all over the production period. The diet has been, as I told you, the diet has been prepared for this period. So the farmers must prepare the diet according to an expected milk yield. So they know the system, so they know what can be the milk yield, the average milk yield of their system from 1 year to another one. This is based on the forage quality, digestibility, energy, and nitrogen. In the French system, the diet is firstly based on the intake capacity of the animal. I mean, how much the animal we eat in forage, and then we supplement the forages with concentrate. So they use mainly the forages harvested, so they use also old concentrate from the industry, or the local concentrate, generally it's cereal. And this diet, once it has been established, is maintained for several weeks. They don't change with the lactation, because the lambing waves. Just this graphic to show you, it's in the abscess you have the time from December to July. And then in blue, you have the daily milk production per day for the total stock. And on your right, the number of used milk per day. In fact, during this period, you have the arrow show you what happened. First of all, the multiparous lamb, so the milk, this first group of animals. Then about 15, 18 days later, the second waves of lambing arrived because it was the multiparous with the ram. And then later comes the ewe lambs, which have been inseminated more or less 1 month later, and so on. So because of this rapid change between 10 to 20 or 20 days, the farmers can't change the diet oftenly. So they maintain the same diet for the whole group. And as I told you, generally they don't have physical groups in the barn. And then the diet is maintained more or less until the grazing period, because afterward the animals, they turn out to pasture. Now, if we go now to this famous, this grazing period, it is also a very critical time because it's a period where the weather is changing every day and very often, sometimes within 1 day. So the animal, they go progressively to pasture. It's a transition period also. The farmers let the animal out for 1 or 2 hours the first day, etc. They have frequent changes in the management of the animal because sometimes they can go out for the whole week and then the cold is coming back and then it's dry, so they can't go out, so they stay in the barn, they don't graze. This is also a period where the milk is regularly decreasing. The farmers decrease also the concentrate because more or less the animal they produce less milk. And for this change, regularly change in the management of the animal, they maintain indoors, let's say a diet, a basal diet made mainly from hay or sometimes silages and concentrate. And this system can compensate the effect of going at the pasture or not. And it will temperate the abrupt change which can occur because weather condition until these conditions are more stable. Let's say it's around May, June. And in all this system, all the animals are kept at night because also difficulties to practice, to manage for the people, for the farmers, but also because, as I told you, we have wolves. They come back in the regions. The farmers have many attacks, and also stray dogs and so on. So they are not. They don't let the animals out during the night. This is also a very difficult period to manage because at this time the farmers are very busy. Animals must at this time recover their body reserves. They are in positive energy balance. So, however, they don't have to recover too much too rapidly because the flushing period is coming within, let's say, one month. Also, the primiparous are still growing. As I told you, they have not finished their growth. And for these animals, they don't be underfed. For the farmers, it's also a difficult period because it's time when they harvest the future stock for hay, silages or rub bells and so on. And it's also a difficult period because it's difficult to manage the pasture. The herbage growth change rapidly. The pasture quality also is changing and the climatic condition may change rapidly. It's very critical period also for the farmers. During the full milking period, if we go now to the, let's say, to the nutrition one, the diet one, when we formulate the diet at this part. The feeding strategy we used is based on the requirement of a defined animal. This defined animal is defined with this body weight, its body condition score, and the variation, and also the milk yield and the milk composition. We calculate for these two parameters what we call standardized milk yield, which is based on the milk fat and protein content. Though these parameters allow to define the requirement of the animals, they also allow us to define the intake capacity, which is based for the LACON on body weight and standardized milk yield. We can calculate the net energy requirements for the different period of the animal, maintenance, and so on, protein requirements, and minerals. Because when the sheep is milking, they have maintenance requirement and production requirement. But the main question, once we have these requirements for one animal, it's how we can manage this for more than 100, 200, 300 animals with very wide variation in milk production. So we have let's say two situations, schematic two situations. Either the farmers knows only the average milk yields and the milk composition of the flock. That means they don't have their individual records, or they have this individual record with the organization. In the first case, they base the diet on the estimated body weight. This parameters also is not known, in fact, in the farm, at the farm level. They have the milk production of the flock, the number, the milk fat and protein content, because it's frequently measured by the industry, and they have the total of the animal. So they can calculate an average animal, an average dairy sheep, for average requirement for energy and protein. Once they have that, assuming a normal distribution of the production, which in general, in fact, it's not true, but they have no way to do in another sense, they calculate the net energy for lactation for the average sheep, and they calculate also the protein requirement, we call PDE, which is protein digestible at the intestine level. And they multiply by 15, sometimes 25, the energy requirements, or 25 to up to 45, the protein requirement. This is in order to cover the requirements of the most producing animals in the group. And the strategy is to also utilize the capacity of the animal to mobilize the body reserve. This is the reason why there is a difference in covering energy and protein. In the second system, in the second situation, when individual information is available because each animal is controlled, they still not have the body weight, they have to be estimated. They have the composition and the milk individual, and so they can calculate the average milk requirement for, theoretically, each animal. In fact, they use the distribution of the production. This is an example in this figure. You have the milk yield, the range of the milk yield of this group, and the number of ewes for each level of production. And they have two different possibilities. First, they can cover the requirements in the same sense as previously. So they apply a percentage of the average requirements, or they prefer to cover X% of the use of the flock. I will show you rapidly. In the first case, it's more or less the same situation than when the farmers doesn't know the individual production. So the farmers, as he knows this distribution, he can select if he cover 15% more for the energy, 25 for PDI, or he may decide to cover more. It's up to him. In the second case, they can say, okay, I prefer to cover 85% of the use for the energy or 93% of the use. In this kind of distribution, we have more or less the same result at the end. So in this situation, the first one with individual information, the consequences is, you may understand easily, we have a lot of economic losses because a lot of concentrate is used for animals who are not producing the milk, the expected milk. We fatten some animals more than necessary. We will decrease the forage digestibility because the level of concentrate is too high for some kind, for the lower producing animals. We have an excessive distribution of protein concentrate. It becomes less efficient. I will show you some figures. Also, the urea level in the milk is increasing, and we consequently have more pollution for nitrogen through urine and feces. This is the situation up to now. Concerning the situation of the protein, I have two examples. I showed two examples. One from the literature from Giovannetti in 2019, and they measure the level of urea in the milk compared to the ratio between crude protein and net energy of the diet. And they show, it's very interesting, they show that when this ratio increase, let's say when the crude protein increase, in fact, the level of urea in the milk increased too. We did this also, these results are not yet published in our situation. We have more or less the same thing. We have the PDI protein digestible in the intestine ratio with net energy of lactation. And we have seen also the same increased level of urea. And in another situation, in this kind of figure, we show that the percentage of total protein requirement covered beyond the expected requirement of the animals. If you feed the animal more than necessary in protein, this is what it means, we have also this milk urea increasing, whatever the net energy in the diet. So it's very common and very used. Urea in the milk is very used as an indicator of energy, protein energy balance in the ruminant diet. But here, it's in this figure, it's quite interesting to understand that. And a long time ago, François Bocquet did this interesting experiment where they collect the level of PDI beyond the maintenance requirement of the animals, and the total milk protein produced. It means the food protein produced in the milk. And they observed that when you increase the level of protein in the diet, we can consider that in these points we have no animal but a group of animals. And when we increase the level of protein in this group, we decrease the efficiency of this level of protein. That means more you bring the protein to the animal, less is efficient. And they found that the efficiency in dairy sheep, in our condition, the efficiency, it's only 58%. But this is maybe because we did this research, and the system is based on very big variation, a wide range of milk production. So what can be the solution for this, for the farmers in this system? So if individual information is not known, I mean, in the first case, it's very difficult for farmers to change something because he has no possibility to identify the best or the lower producing use because they don't know. they can only group fed the animals according to the lambing dates, because they know that the multiparous produce more milk than the primiparous, or even they can separate the ewes with single lambs and the ewes with twice or more lambs, because when the number of the little size increase, the milk also increase. This is a way to modulate the diet. But the big difficulties for the farmers is the constraint is they are bound with the number of places for the animals, so they have to adapt the structure of the barn with the group of the animals. They are also with the place at the milking parlor, because they can't. It's difficult to have a group with when the milking is occurring. If he has to finish the group with only 2 or 3 sheep. So it's quite complicated for this in this situation. Otherwise, on the contrary, with individual information is now, we have several. We can have several homogeneous groups. We can regroup the animal with more limited variation in milk production, and they can have also the same strategy. In this case, when we decide to make 2 or 3 groups of animals according to the level of production, François Bocquier, in the previous experiment in the 1990, they observed that it was not interesting to make more than 2 or 3 groups of the animals. And they don't, and in this case, they didn't save any concentrate. They only, it occurred also a very complicated management of the system. They have to move the animal frequently, twice a day. They have to adjust the number to the milking parlor place, and so on. And we renewed this experiment in 2019, and we found exactly the same results, with animals producing much more milk than previously. Now, let's go to this new system. When you know the animal, or I forgot to say that each animal is individually identified, electronically identified. So with the new system, the figure, the photography at the bottom is the system which allows to feed individually the animals. They have 3 compartments. You can have 3 different concentrates. And the companies, they sold this kind of material to the farmers, saying that you will save concentrate, it's more adapted to the situation. And in fact, a lot of farmers bought this system, which is quite expensive anyway. But the interest of this system is the farmer can create virtual groups. That means all the animals can be mixed in the barn. Once they arrive at the milking parlor, they are fed at each level of milking yield. It can be, in fact, it's not totally individual. It's a small group of animals with a milk production with a variability of about 400 to 500 milliliters. It depends the situation of the farmers. It depends the objective of the farmers. But what is interesting is that we can save concentrate like that, not overfed too many animals, and so on. They also use this kind of material to manage the body condition score of the young animals, because not always the milk, but also the body condition is important for these young animals. To limit their fattening, or to allow the animal to continue their growth. And we made a survey last 4 years about this system in different farms to know how they use this system and what can be what can they earn about the system. In fact, they applied 3 kinds of farms. They applied 3 different strategies. The first one is reallocated concentrate. That means what was given to the less producing ewes will be given to the more producing one. So they just change the amount of concentrate. The second one is to save concentrate. They fix the level of concentrate to the highest producing ewes, and then they reduce the concentrate for all the animals. And the third one is an intermediate system. It depends on the strategy of the farmers. But in the three cases, we found no difference in the milk production or the milk composition. And only the first one can, only the second one can save concentrate, and the farmers can earn some euros afterward. And in fact, we also observe that many farmers do not use specifically this system for controlling the milk production, but more or less to adapt the concentrate to the general situation of the animal. If it's too fat, it will reduce the concentrate, or the contrary, to manage also the reproduction period for the flushing, or to manage the level of concentrate for the young animals. In the general system, I'll just give you, I don't want to describe it because it would be too long, just to show you some diets which are used in early lactation and in the mid lactation. These values come from the recent booklet we have produced in 2019 in the Dairy Sheep Nutrition in France, which has been made with technicians from the field and also researchers. So you may have an idea of what we use and what amount we use in the farms. So you may understand that the milk production of this all this system depends on the genetic merit of the animal, which is still progressing. They don't stop for that. It depends also in our system on the forage quality, and this is quite important because when the season is bad, when a year is bad, the farmers they see that the milk production, they know that the milk production will decrease because the forage quality decreased. And as they can't buy too much concentrate, they are linked to the forage quality. So this is very important in our situation. And also the diet management, as I told you previously. This milk also depends about the health status of the animal and mainly the udder. Also the appropriate the management of the different kind of animal, the physiological stage, as I told you, end of gestation and so on, we have seen previously. But it's not the only reason. There are another one, which is, from my point of view and also from colleagues, which is very important. This is the young animal. Because the growth of the ewe lamb will have different consequences of the future milk production. I have almost finished now. I want to finish with this system. In the Lacon system, I precise, it's the Lacon system. Now, the reproduction for the ewe lambs, it's very early. It's 7 to 9 months, more or less. For lambing at 1 year old, which is very short. And the ewe lamb is, in all the cases, the ewe lamb is a future dairy ewes. So the growth of this animal will have a big impact, or may have a big impact, on this future lactation, milk yield, and the longevity of the animals. And in fact, these animals are not well, they are well managed, but the farmers don't really manage the animal very in detail. However, a good management of their growth is a bet for the future of these animals. And we have seen young animals which have been cured only because they don't produce more the milk we expected. And in fact, the reason was they couldn't grow as they should to produce such level of milk. I will show you some examples also. So in this system, we may have three different objectives for this young animal. First of all is to develop the rumen. This is the organism, the organ which will digest all the diet, the forage. It must be well developed. In our condition, the body weight at mating should be about 2/3, 66%. In our condition, it's 47 to 50 kilograms of the adult weight. The growth will still continue the first 3 months of gestation, about the first 100 days, with about 100 to 150 grams per day. And the body weight after lambing must be more or less 80% of the adult weight, which is in our case, it's about 60, 65 kilograms. We have established with colleagues and also with technicians from the field a plan of nutrition for this kind of animal to allow the farmers to better manage the different animals. Now, this is an example. Once again, I don't want to describe all because it would be too long. You can see just the suckling period. What we can say, it's very growth very quick because the mother has a lot of milk. In general, it's about 200, 300 grams per day. Then after weaning, we recommend about 200 grams per day of daily weight gain. Then we reduce this one and to reach the first period of artificial insemination or mating. So this has been produced, also to take into account the development of the udder, which is not regular along the growth of the animal. There is some period where the udder tissue develop at the same level as the body weight, and other, it's the contrary. So we have to manage the different period. And this one is about, let's say, about the 4-5 months of years old. So during this time, we should not increase a lot the level of concentrate, because we can develop more the fat tissue than the udder tissue, the secretory tissue. Just to show you, we have done some years ago now a survey in the farm to see what could be the consequences of a low body weight at lambing. It's the body weight you can see, it's after lambing. And we found that the consequences on the milk production, it's quite evident in this situation. So the same animals in different years also, but if the body weight is too low, the milk production will be low. In this case, the farmers will kill the animals because they don't produce a lot, but it was not the fault of the animals. It was not the genetic fault. It was only the management of the growth. And when the animals are well conducted during the growth period, the milk production is also good. And as these animals, they ate the same diets than the adult, we have controlled that during the same period, the adults have they have not different production. So the difference in this system was not the diet level, but really the live weight of the animals. So in this case, a wrong management of the ewe lamb will have an impact of the reproduction on the reproduction. It may have an impact on the reproduction. This is the first step to have milk, a milk production, and consequently, this milk production will have an impact of the offspring growth, because if these small animals, they don't produce a lot of milk, they don't allow the offspring to grow well. They have also, or they may have health problem because they may be less resistant to disease. And also the consequences at the farm levels, it's early culling and economic losses due to the low milk results. Generally, this is the case, low milk result or low reproduction results. So the farmers will kill the animals very early. Also, the reason was the wrong management of the growth. So one talk is very important for me. It's to take care of this replacement land. Don't forget these animals. They will be the next. They will be the next dairy use. Now, at the conclusion, the dairy sheep system we have, but I'm sure it's not the only one in other countries, but in France, this animal, they are all group fed with more or less heterogeneous individual milk yield, it depends on the condition. We should match the requirements at the major physical period, I told you, end of pregnancy, early lactation, all the transition period, turn out to pasture also, and the ewe-lamb growth. And we have to take into account also now the animal welfare, the environmental and economic aspect, because the social people, they want the farmers to be perfect, to well manage the animal, to not pollute, and to be economic. And as a nutritionist, we should not, I want to finish with that, do not forget that any formulation software are tools. But this software, they don't think in place of you, not yet, maybe later. So, in fact, the nutritionist that we are is an expert who takes into account the final decision, and we take into account the farmer's situation, and will take the decision in agreement with the farmers. And this is what we have to do. I have finished. Thank you for your attention, all of you. Merci tous.
Thank you so much, Philippe. I'm going to take control back and finish up I have to do an introduction in the next webinar, and then we will get to the questions. I'll read the questions off, or my co-hosts will join me to ask questions. So let me introduce our next webinars and thank our sponsors. So, all right. We have our regular nutritionist webinar series, and our next presentation will be Dr. Vadim Bekchebnikov. He is the AMTS distributor in Russia. In addition to acting as our distributor in Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus, Vadim manages Novalab, a Cumberland Valley analytics affiliate, manages and consults in dairies in Russia and the Ukraine, and he also manages the 8,000 cow U.S. Beaver Creek dairy in Michigan. So please consider joining us on May 13th at either 9 a.m. or 6 p.m. if you have an interest in both small ruminants and large dairy cattle. We will wind up our sheep nutritionist series for the year, but I promise you that we may revisit this for another set of webinars next year. We had excellent response. We have one more featured webinar this spring focusing on sheep nutrition, and that will be with John Winchell from Alltech. He's that nutritionist that we suspect there are a lot of, who works primarily in dairy cattle, but has found himself working more and more in small ruminants and with a focus on sheep, most likely dairy sheep. So John's going to take our small ruminants model that we have in AMTS nutrition software, and he's going to work with some of the information we've gained in these last two webinars. And also, I'm hoping that my other hosts or my other speakers will join or listen, and we'll look at how that works in the model. So finally, I want to thank today's co-hosts and my regular co-hosts. So I am juggling things here. The webinars are organized and produced by AMTS USA and Global, and our co-hosts today are John Winchell. He's a longtime AMTS Pro user with dairy cattle who's been working most recently in our small ruminant model. John's I already mentioned, he's gonna take the webinar information and put it in the model. We're also joined today by our distributor in Turkey, Dr. Huday Kavustran. We have joining us our longtime The Nutritionist collaborator, Paula Torillo of EFINA, who hosts the webinars as El Webinar del Nutricionista, and she receives support from Rock River Labs in Argentina. She is delivering the webinar in Spanish for an Argentinian audience. We're also joined by our distributor in Italy, Elena Bonfante. Elena is a partner in Dairy Innovations Italia, where she acts as a nutritionist consultant. Chloe Gangloff and earlier Masuda Noon, both from Medina, joined as panelists. Chloe will ask, and she's located in France. If you were able to join us last month, Masoud gave us an excellent talk on lamb fattening, the recording for which will be available on our website, I promise you soon. We are especially thankful to our generous sponsors who make it possible for us to get great speakers and manage the program. We thank our gold sponsors, Arm & Hammer Animal and Food Production, #ScienceHearted, the Canola Council of Canada. Learn more about feeding canola at canolamazing.com. And by the way, while we're speaking of canola, I will be having a webinar that will speak directly about some of the environmental concerns that will be scheduled in June. I don't have the details of it yet, but come to our website and look at that. That may be applicable for some of the information that you're learning today from Dr. Hassoun. We also thank Adina, experts in animal nutrition with expertise in plant bioactives, and Protetka, transforming the future of farm animal health. Our silver sponsors are Ajinomoto, Superior Nutrition through amino acids, and Virtus, both of whom have sponsored us from the start. Also, we thank the forage analysis laboratories of Dairy One Laboratories and Dairyland. Both have affiliates around the world. Adiseo, Animal Nutrition Solutions to ensure animal performance, and micronutrients feeding the future. Our bronze sponsors are AminoMax, Purdue Agribusiness, Origination Inc., Phileo, Balchem, and the Milk Group. Each of these companies support education and research worldwide. We hope that you consider them in your formulation decisions. So now that I've done all that, I'm going to go to the display view so that Dr. Hassoun, you can tell me where you would like me to go if you have certain questions that you would like to refer to a slide. And I want to encourage my co-hosts to say hello now. And
yeah, I'm here.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for joining. I have spoken enough. I'm going to ask Elena to lead us off if you have any questions or comments that you want to ask from the Italian perspective, or just straight out any perspective.
Thank you, Marianne, and thank you, Philippe, for the good presentation. Very interesting. So I say in front that I focus mainly in dairy cows, but I agree with you that in Italy the sheep production is one of the main in Europe, and as you said, is the third for milk production. But we have much more work to do for improving, I think, the production per sheep, as you shown us. I think there is more work also to do, and thank you for the suggestions and your research. I have a question also related to the if I can call it the transition period of the sheep, and if now with the high producing flocks, you face also more problem related with calvings, for example, or is it something that it doesn't belong to the sheep production?
First of all, concerning the milk production, the work you have to do in Italy, it's not, don't worry. In fact, we improved the genetic aspect of the Lacon for more than 50 years. I don't know in Italy when it started, but the fight is very, very long, so it's a long way. So don't worry, the thing will be increased the next year.
Okay.
And also concerning the transition period for between the end of gestation and beginning of lactation, it's very critical one, because as you have seen, the animals, the demand, the energy and protein demand from the fetuses at the end of the gestation, and then the same, but for lactation, is very high. And the sheep during this time, the sheep has lower intake, so it can't intake all the energy and protein that it needs to cover the requirements of the fetus of the milk. So consequently, they start to mobilize their body reserves at this end of gestation, which is a critical period. I didn't speak about because I had no time to that. And the difficulties is if this mobilization is too high, you may have this toxemia, gestation toxemia, which can occur at this time because the level of energy, the level of fatty acid, the level of fatty acid in the blood transformed by the liver will create a lot of cetonic corpus, and which are which will impair the health of the animal, and we have great consequences. This is why I recommend to give to these animals high quality forages at the end of the gestation, because as it's high, they can less mobilize their body reserves for the beginning of lactation. I don't know if this is the answer.
Yes, but and also, if I may ask, on a mineral point of view, there is some recommendation to take in account.
Yes, but in fact, I didn't speak about mineral because it's a wide situation. And as you know, because we fed the animal in big groups, the recommendation is a recommendation, an average one. And in fact, in the situation in our system, there is no real problem for the mineral.
Okay. A last question related to the automatic feeding systems. So in order to formulate for the base diet, do you take into consideration the average, requirement, and then feed the extra for the high producing sheep, or less? Do you feed for less?
Yeah, in fact, the farmers, for the time being, they utilize the basal diet for all the animals, and they feed the extra concentrate or low concentrate according to the milk yield. But from my point of view, because now they have all parameters except the body weight, they have all parameters to more fit the requirement of the animals. I mean, they can calculate the diet, the exact diet of the different milk production animals. I mean, we know that more they produce, the more they eat. So when the intake is high, most of the intake at the beginning is from forages. So you have to take into account forages first, and then introduce the concentrate. In the previous system, we ignored this one. We just assume that they all will eat the same level, and we adjust the concentrate according to the milk. But now, with this automatic feeder system, the farmers are able to propose a diet for a small group of animals. I told you it's a virtual group. So they can calculate what amount of forage they would eat, and then adjust the concentrate in agreement with this system. For the time being, they don't, because they have not the software for that. It's quite complicated. It's not established now. But for me, it has a sense with this system. And the new feeding system we have established in France, I didn't speak about because it's too complicated for now, will allow the farmers to better feed the animal and reduce the production of methane or reduce the production of nitrogen according to this new system.
Thank you very much, Philippe.
Thank you, Elena. And thank you for joining. Philippe, I have a couple more. I have many questions here in the English side, but I do have other hosts that I want to defer to first. And Hudai, I'm not deliberately leaving you to the end, but I'm going to ask Paula if she would ask her questions next. Paula's in Argentina, and she has to leave to go to a class. So I want to make sure she gets an opportunity to ask her questions. So go ahead, Paula.
Hi, Philippe. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, nice to meet you. It was a great presentation. Very interesting. Okay, I have a couple of questions. The first one is, can you make some comments on trace and micro minerals importance in lactating ewes?
I'm sorry, but I have no information on this. In fact, in our system, trace mineral and the farmers, they only use what can I say, general minerals adapted for the milking production. They don't exactly feed the animals according the individual or more individual requirements. So they don't. I don't say they don't care, they care, but they have only one kind of formulation, which can be also adapted according to the forage situation. But you know, to adjust the minerals to the animals, you should know, okay, the requirements, that's what, but also you should know the composition, the mineral composition of the feed. And if 70% is a forage, you have to know the composition. It costs a lot to determine that. So generally they assume, or they have some assumption, and they just distribute the minerals every day. But in fact, they have no lot of problem with that. And they have also the leak blocks beside. So I have no return from the field that there is a lot of problem with minerals. They have questions. That's true. They have also questioned because a lot of companies want to sell a special mixture, but they don't have, you know, all the information to decide if it's good or if it's not. And we should never forget that the animals are fed in very, very big groups. So it will change between one ewe producing 3 liters per day and one ewe producing 1 liter per day.
Perfectly understood. Can you make more specific comments about feeding the lambs after weaning, the first 20 days after weaning?
In fact, in our situation, the objective is to allow the lambs to have high growth, because once you have lost this period, it's very difficult to recover the growth. So after weaning, it's a very short period because they stop to suckle the mother, and then what we recommend is to identify for the female those which that have a lot lower, that have a lower gabarit, a lower weight, or they seems to be smaller than the other one. And for that, you have to isolate these animals, make the small group with this kind of animals to allow them to recover or to grow faster than the others. Because generally it will occur with the animals from litter size of 2 or 12 or 3 different lambs. If you let all the lambs together, the heavier, the bigger, the stronger will limit the access to the barn, the access to the smallest one. And because they are small, because they are smaller than the others, the growth will be lower. So if you want to manage properly the growth of this kind of animals, you have to create the groups to have lambs with the same weight. Or if you don't weigh the animal, they have the same stature. And first, we privilege, we give also a good forage for this animal because they start to use the rumen and they have to use a good forage, not straw or something else. They will start to be ruminant now.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I have the last question. This is about the cost of production per use per year.
So I'm very sorry, but I have no information on this.
That's okay. Don't worry about that. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for joining, Paula. And I apologize to the people waiting for their questions to be asked. My co-hosts seem to all have to leave. So, Philippe, I'm going to ask John Winchell to speak next, and then we will do a few of my questions, circle around back to Hudai, who's staying with me. Thank you. Go ahead, John.
Well, good morning, Philippe. Thank you for having me, and I really appreciated your webinar. It was really nice and really good information and broken down and put forth very nice. I have a few questions. What would you say is the typical milk production on average per day for most of the sheep, the lactating? Just a guess.
Yeah, the milk production, if for the full lactation in the lacon, you mean, it's about 300 liters.
Okay. All right. I was just curious. And then you were mentioning earlier that the silage was banned in certain areas by I think you said AOP. Is that primarily due to Listeria and Salmonella, or?
Probably is the reason at the beginning. They want to, they also think that silage has been seen like a bad forage for many farmers and many times because it's very difficult practice. It's a good one for me. It's a good forage, but it has to follow some rules to be good at the finish. So in this area, they prefer to stop the silages to avoid any contamination, the milk contamination by Listeria and so on. And in this region, it's a big problem because you may have, they produce maize silage, corn silage. And once you have not this one, it's very difficult to find out a forage with such high level of energy.
Yep, and that makes sense. And then due to the flock size, I mean, obviously, you know, when you have a silage, you need to utilize it and make sure it's preserved and stored correctly too. So that makes a lot of sense.
John,
Yes.
on that as well, and I don't know if this is the case with sheep, but in cattle, sometimes it does affect the cheeses, and you can introduce
Yep.
you can introduce some gases that you don't want and have some blowing in cheeses when they're fed silage.
That makes 100% sense. We're starting to see that in certain dairies, and certain co-ops are actually looking into the flavoring of milk and looking at each individual farm to see what certain farms are doing different, maybe not in a good way, according to flavor. So yeah, I have been seeing that more and more here too.
Okay.
Do you see, Philippe, do you monitor MUN levels consistently in the milk, or milk urea nitrogen?
Oh, sorry, I didn't catch the question.
Do you monitor, and do you normally look at what the milk urea nitrogen levels are? You've mentioned soluble protein a few times, but I didn't know if you actually look at the milk urea nitrogen levels in the milk.
It's not measured frequently, in fact.
Yep.
For most of the farmers, the industry, they control the fat and protein content, also the bacteria level, but that's all. They don't have a lot of measure. Only they start to measure now the urea level, not nitrogen, but urea level in milk. But it's mid-infrared spectroscopy, which is not completely accurate, not yet.
Okay. What change in the percent forage in the diet do you normally see from going from late gestation to lactation?
In fact, they don't change a lot. Because as I told you, everything must be quite regular in this place. I don't know, at the final period, they can reach, at the beginning of lactation, they can reach about 35% of concentrate for the animals. But as I told you, the objective is to have the higher forage, the higher quality forages, and for that we limit the concentrate. And also, John, because in this area, they are obliged to limit the level of concentrates they can buy out of the farm. They are not allowed to buy a lot of concentrate. They are limited to, just the rule is about 200 kilograms per ewe and per year for any kind of feed, concentrates or straw, or it's not straw, concentrates or hay or something else. So no, it's a very strong rule for the farmers. And in fact, this level of concentrate doesn't change a lot between the both.
Okay, well that's interesting. Thank you for answering that. One other question, or maybe I think I have one or two more real quick. What parameters do you look at mostly in AMTS? Like on the fiber side, do you look at NDF, or what are your fiber parameters that you monitor?
In fact, in our situation, we use the INRAE, which is software produced by my institute. And now we are renewing this one with the new system settled last 2 years. But in fact, with sheep, it's not common, and most in the field, the different structure, they have built their own software.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And do you finally, one last question, metabolically, what are your biggest metabolic challenges that you see in lactating ewes? What do you see displaced abomasums? What do you normally see as one of your biggest concerns that you run into with different issues in lactating?
The biggest one, the more important one, is just after lambing. Because this is your question?
Yes. Because
this is where all the difficulties occur. They will have ewes with very high producing ewes, so they have mastitis, sometimes very bad with infections and so on. This is also the time when the mobilization of the body's condition is quite high, though they have also problem with that. This is also the problem for the ewe lambs, the new one, the primipaus, because they are not used to go to the milking parlor. Well, this is the very critical period for the farmers and for the milk production. And if you miss something during this time, you can lose a lot. And most of the health problems occurred during this period. Afterward, it's quite regular, and there is no real difficult situation.
Yeah, that makes sense. Once you get them through. That's, you know, through that beginning period, it's definitely that is the most critical time. So, well, thank you so much. I appreciate
you're welcome, John. Thank you for.
Thank you, John, for joining. I'm sorry you have to leave early. Okay, I'm going to now ask a few questions and see if I can go. There's a lot, and if I can go through a few, and then Hudai, I hope that you have some questions or comments. You're in Turkey. You knew that, but maybe our audience doesn't. Sorry. So here's a question. Do you think the best milking ewes eat more at pasture and provide them with more concentrate that is not needed? And have you collected data of residual feed intake in milking ewes?
So for the pasture, in fact, the big problem is, as you may have seen in my presentation, that the pasture, the main period for pasture occur when the animals are producing less. The level of milk production during this period is about 1.7 to 1.5 milk per day. And at this time, the farmers, they don't really care about the milk production because most of the milk have been already produced. And they reduce the level of concentrate at this time, and they use as much as possible the quality of the pasture for this period. You know, there is few, and we have no answer for that, but there are few systems where the farmers start the production during the grazing period. I mean, when lambing occurs about in February, March. That means they will start the main milk production period in spring, and we have no real return information about this system. But there are not a lot.
Okay, thank you. And do you have? I'm sorry. Did you?
The second question was.
The second question is: have you collected data of residual?
We are working on this. We are working on this at the Lafarge experimental farm. We do experiment with the genetician team to understand the efficiency of the animals. And as we have few results now. It's not my competence directly now. But what we have seen, we can have. In fact, it's not so easy to answer because with the new feeding system we have established, we discovered that when we found animals not efficient, in fact, we ignore some interaction, very strong interaction in the rumen. For example, in one period, we tested the once milking, which is forbidden for Lacon, but we had at this time the authorization from the system, and we found animals eating the same, having the same voluntary intake than animals with twice milking per day, but producing less milk. So they eat the same level of energy and protein and so on. They produce less milk, but we didn't find any increasing fattening or higher growth body weight of the animals. And at this time we didn't know why it becomes like that. And we think the solution is with the new system because the interaction, the nutritive interaction in the rumen are very strong for the small ruminant is very, very important. What we have seen recently is, for example, the level of intake expressed as a percentage of the body weight. In Lacan and also in the Pyrenean breed, they are more than 5% of the body weight, which is very high. And sometimes in our situation, we may have up to 5%. And in this case, with the new system we discovered that this high level of energy of intake will reduce by about 10 points the digestibility of the diet, which is enormous. So we are working on this. We have not yet complete results, but yes, we are working on this one.
So I'm sorry I missed. How many, did that vary the number of times you were milking?
Sorry?
I missed the initial setup when you said you compared with milking twice a day, and what was?
Sorry, we test milking the animal twice a day. This is normal one situation, and once a day.
Okay.
And
Okay.
this practice is forbidden for the Roquefort area.
Okay.
We tested because it was very important to know what would be the reaction, because the farmers they want to not to work less, but to have more time, even at some period of the milking production, even during the grazing period, and they wanted to know how will the Lacan breed respond to this practice.
Are there any studies or attempts to do automatic milking, like a robot milking system?
No, we still not have this one.
Okay. A question with relation to the taking the NEL of the feed, as you mentioned, is in this system, sort of generated by your last comment that the more they eat, the lower digestibility. Have you examined the ME or MP type systems, metabolizable energy or metabolizable protein systems that are more predominant in the CNCPS, where it does take into consideration animal size and rate of digestibility?
No, in fact, we didn't on dairy sheep, because the farm we have in Lafarge is not equipped with such material to measure this one. And we are in France trying to stop any fistulated animals because welfare problem. So we didn't test this or didn't measure this. Maybe it has been done on other kind of sheep, but not for dairy sheep.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Trying to get through some of these questions. Do you have an estimation on grass? Do you have an ability to estimate grass consumption?
No, in fact, I started to work on this subject at the beginning because we had no information on it. But it was too difficult to change the management of the animals, and the low results I have been I obtained. We found 1.5 kilograms dry matter with only pasture, ad libitum pasture, and no forage inside. And it was, at this time, it was very surprising because it was very low compared to what we expected. And we recently made some, let's say, gathering different information from the literature, also sure with other breeds, but anyway, and also from information collected from the field, from the technician and the colleagues working at the pasture. And we provide some recommendation, intake recommendation, according to the time, the grazing time, and the breed, Lacan, Pyrenean, or Corse, and the quality of the pasture. But it's a kind of rule of thumb, you know. But there are some recommendations for the farmers to take into account the pasture into the diet, because this is the big problem for them.
Mm-hmm.
Hudai, can I offer you opportunity to ask a couple of questions while I organize myself?
Okay. Thank you, Philippe, for your presentation. We picked up lots of information about French shipping. So I would like to learn about the milk, sheep milk price versus the cow's milk.
You want to know why there is some difference, so big difference?
Okay, what's the ratio? You know, for example, in Turkey,
the ratio, let's say it's more or less, well, roughly it's about 0.9 to 1 euro per liter for the sheep.
0.9, yes.
For the sheep, because it's sheep, but it's also the case for the goats.
Mm-hmm.
For the cow, it's much more or less. I don't really know the
0.3 something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's the same in Turkey. You know, it's 3 times. The sheep milk is 3 times higher than the cow's milk.
Yeah, this is also the reason why some farmers change and stop to use the cow or something else, because with a very small number of sheep, they earn a lot.
Yeah.
Especially if they do yogurt.
Mm-hmm.
It's let's say 5 yogurt per liter, 4 or 5 yogurt per liter. With €4 per yogurt, you can know how many they can earn.
Yeah. Okay, my second question is that about the lamb production per each breed. You mentioned 3 breeds, main breeds here.
Yeah.
Locan or Pyrenean or Manech. How many lambs do you get on average per sheep?
I think it's about 1.2, 1.5
1.2
lambs.
So, okay, you mentioned that you are feeding the male lambs after weaning, or the farmers are feeding the male lambs for meat production.
No. In the Lacan system, the male lambs are sold to the special fattening structure. In the Pyrenean and in Corsica, the lambs are sold at weaning to be slaughtered. They are slaughtered, they call milk lamb, very young.
Okay, they are sold at a very early age, to the slaughterhouse.
Yeah,
that's one.
About less than 1 month old.
Yeah, what's the carcass weight at that time?
Oh, well, sorry, I don't know.
You don't know. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your answer.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Hudai. So a question on, do you adapt protein supply to the quality of the protein, to the amino acids?
No, we are not yet at this level, not like the dairy cows.
Okay, all right.
The best we can do is to introduce the bypass protein in early lactation, end of gestation, early lactation, until more or less 1 month before turn out to pasture. But that's all. We don't adapt with protected methionine, for example, or lysine, and so on. There are some studies I have seen in the field, but you know, we may understand that once you want to do that, you will apply that to hundreds of animals with more or less hundreds of milk yield. So it's quite difficult to know if introducing X gram of methionine, protected methionine, will have an effect on so numbers of animals.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, do you foresee that there is a market or a potential for that?
There is some companies, they try to do it, but they have some difficulties to prove that there is an effect, a real effect, because for my opinion, because with such wide variation in the flock, maybe the benefit it's only for the most producing ewes, not for the others.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe with this new individual feeding system, maybe that will be more interesting for the farmers or even for the companies. But up to now, it was not.
Okay. So this next question may be in that same line. What are the recommendations to increase milk protein content?
What?
How would you? I'm sorry. How would you increase the protein content of the milk? Is that in dairy cattle? You know, that's done quite frequently, but in sheep, or it's attempted.
Yeah, we can increase mainly with energy. The most effect has been proved by François Bocquet, in particular. When you increase the energy level, you can increase the protein level in the milk. You can also increase, but at a lesser level, with increasing the level of protein. But as all the animals are already overfed with protein, you know, once again, if you increase the protein in the diet, only a very small part of the animal will have benefits of it. On the contrary, if you increase the energy level, you will allow the most producing animal to produce more protein, because we know that the synthesis of protein needs a lot of energy, and this is quite important in the dairy sheep. Maybe more than in cow, because in the protein content in the dairy sheep is quite high compared to the cow or even the goat. So the main effect is increasing the energy.
Okay. I have a question. I have a question that actually is being asked by two people. So I'm just going to ask it. One was Elena in Italy is there a recommendation for potassium level in the transition diet? And then I have a question that is, what about calcium and potassium levels of the total ration?
I have no idea of the level of the total ration, honestly. And we have no recommendation to use potassium for the transition period.
Okay. All right. Thank you. How do you balance diets with some of the when you're trying to deal with the changes in the pasture or on the farm?
This is, in fact, at this time, the farmers don't really establish a diet. They have, you know, because once the diet is established mainly for the period, the indoor period. When they go to the pasture, it's changed more or less every day, every 2 days. So they can't establish a single diet for this period, at least in Lacan. In the Pyrenean area, because they use pasture almost every day, because the weather allow this practice, they introduce the level of the intake from the pasture into the diet. Yes, for them, they use it. So they assume a certain level of intake of forage intake from the pasture. They use like any forage in the diet, and they produce the diet with including the pasture. But in Lacan, we have not yet used this one.
Oh, okay, thank you. What increment or increase do you recommend for the increase in energy requirement for flushing?
In fact, the flushing period, it means that the animal, before these 3-4 weeks before matting, the farmers are used to reduce the energy level in the diet. It's more or less underfeeding the animals in energy, but they don't really care about that, because in fact they produce less milk than in the indoor period. And because they do that, once they increase the level of energy with generally barley or sometimes corn, it's about, we have some recommendation in the book, but I think it's about 300 or 400 grams barley per day. And also the farmers are used to manage that according to the body condition score of the animals. If they are too fat, they don't do it because they will not have any effect. And they maintain this level of concentrate up to 3 to 4 weeks after the artificial insemination or the matting period, because they have to maintain a high level of energy for the fetus, for the embryon.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I had a question. Would you recommend do you recommend a certain length of the dry period, and how many days before the expected parturition do you start an increase in the level of protein and energy?
The drying period is it's very, let's say, there is no specific rule. In fact, once the animal produce only, once they have been matted, they stop milking the animals about 3 to 4 weeks later. Also because in our system, the farmers are linked with the industry, the dairy industry, and they are linked to the dates, the opening and the closing dates of the industry. So they can't give their milk out of these dates. So then they dry the animals. In Lacan, it's around August. And then they manage the animal like animal at maintenance level. And then we start to give protein level, let's say out about the last week before lambing.
Okay, thank you. Do you feed liquid sugar like glycol, glucose, fructose, maltodextrin in transition and in the first lactating period?
No, we don't, because in the Roquefort and other DPO cheese area, it's forbidden. In this area, we can't use NGO, we can't use protected fat, we can't use some kind of this kind of feed. It's quite natural. And also, I forgot to answer also to John a few minutes before. Silages, also the problem with silages for some areas is because we use crude milk for the cheese. They don't pasteurize or do any thermic modification. So any milk with this problem with bacteria, we can produce gas in the cheese, cannot be allowed. So they separate the milk collected from this part, and they don't use it for some kind of cheese.
Okay, yes, thank you. A couple of questions that are taking some of the knowledge we have from dairy cows and seeing if they are applied to sheep. In the transition period of sheep, do you use propylene glycol and rumen protected choline? Would they have a similar effect as in dairy cows?
They can use propylene glycol only if there is I think in the beginning, in early lactation, where the animal may have some acetonemia problem. Otherwise, during the transition period, they don't use. I'd say it's not a rule. They use if they have problem for some animals. It's not for all the flock.
Okay. Is DCAD balancing applied in the periprurient period? Is DCAD balancing applied in the periprurient period?
What is DCAD balance?
It's balancing, oh golly, what does DCAD stand for? It's used in dairy cattle quite a bit, and it's used to balance.
Cation balancing.
Thank you.
Sorry?
Bonjour Philippe, c'est la BACA.
Yeah. Zika, okay. This will be used in the next system. It will be introduced in the next system. And now for the the system we use, there is no, we don't use Zika as an indicator for anything.
Okay.
It will be taken in consideration for the next system.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I was having a senior moment is what we called it here. Let's see, do you have, apart from higher quality forages and modulating the energy of the diet, what are the common practices to prevent pregnancy toxemia?
Good question. In fact, it's quite variable according to the situation in the farm. So it depends on the situation. There are farmers that they have, because they don't follow the rules, they don't feed, or they can't feed the animals with good forages, so they are obliged to limit the system, or they have to call the veterinarian to solve the problem. But when it occurs, they don't have the possibilities to foresee the situation. So, except using good forage and concentrate, and the technicians are quite let's say quite good. They have good advice on this for the farmers. Except that, I don't know what they can propose to the farmers, unless to limit the problem if the situation before lambing is too complicated, too difficult.
Okay, I have a comment from one of our listeners in Israel. They use glycerin for at least 14 to 20 days of pregnancy and for the first 3 months of lactation to assist in avoiding pregnancy toxemia and ketosis in the first stage of lactation. Is that something you're familiar with?
In this time, that's true. That can be occurred in some flocks, because it depends. Once again, it depends the situation of the flock. It depends also the quality of the forage, because it's the basic of the diet. So when it occurs, they can use this propylene glycol to provide more glucose rapidly. Or they have, I'm not veterinarian, so it's quite difficult to answer for them, but this is the solution I know.
Okay.
But there are not so many problems like that, because if you well manage the transition period, or if you know that you will have problems, so you can foresee the situation.
Okay. Do you have a recommendation of an ideal ratio of PDI to NEL for optimum nutritional results in dairy ewes according to its production level?
PDI on what? Sorry.
NEL.
NEL, what is?
I think, where was that slide?
Yeah, let's see.
I'm trying to, I noted
Is
what
the net energy for lactation, Marianne?
Yeah, NEL is, it was in the slide set somewhere.
The 1.1. Yeah.
Sorry?
Protein for net energy, you mean?
Exactly.
Yes.
In fact, I don't have in mind this ratio. It can be strange, but as we don't work with this kind of indicators, I don't know.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I think it was referring to this slide here, number 39 in the deck.
Yeah, well, we have no value. In fact, we have for this, we just established the requirement of the animal for energy and protein, that's all. We don't try to find out a ratio in particular, you know.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Do you have experiences?
Just as
sorry,
just
go ahead.
To finish this one, because this ratio are used when you feed one animal. When you feed a group animals, as you may see in the next slide, don't forget they are overfed with energy and more with protein. The ratio protein on net energy has no sense in this time. The ratio and protein on energy is interesting for one animal for one situation, particular situation. In this group, there is for me, there is no sense to have a rule on it, because, you know, it depends how many percentage you increase the energy or the protein. In some farms, they use 1.45. It means more or less all the animals are covered. So you may imagine the ratio we may have.
Okay, thank you. These are a couple questions about automatic feeding. Is TMR feeding common in dairy ewes, or most farmers using automatic feeding and forages?
TMR it's about, I think in my memories, it's about 30% in the farms using the TMR.
Okay.
Most of them use A. In Lacan system, there are about 35, I think, 35% of the farmers using silages. And for that, they can use this TMR system diet. For hay, they don't have, because it's not possible to do. They distribute the hay and the concentrate, and that's all.
Right, right.
You know, at the milking parlor, they just give a supplement, or sometimes some concentrates to incite the animal to come on in the milking parlor.
Is there a situation where they wouldn't have enough time to consume all of the grain they need, or the concentrate in the milking parlor, to properly balance?
It may occur. It depends. The farmers and the technician, they provide some advice for that, because as they are fed twice a day, I think they must not eat more than 250 grams per animal. But it occurs very often that the sheep has no time to eat all.
Okay.
This is once again, it depends the situation of the farms. Some animals are used to eat a lot, so they will eat quickly, some others not. There is no big rule. In some farms, they can distribute more than 200 grams per milking, and they consume all.
Okay, thank you. I know that you've said that the lambs are left on the ewes for the first until weaning. Do you have experiences with automatic milk feeding for lambs in the system?
No, I don't have any experience on it.
Okay, thank you.
No, sorry.
A couple of questions about udder health. Can you tell us of the experience you have in udder health difference between organic and non-organic, and the challenges in this?
The rule in organic, I don't know exactly the rules, but they can't use artificial insemination. They can't use any treatment on the animal, or even once per period or something like that. They must use organic feed. That's true. And it's quite complicated for them. But the milk price is also interesting. So, but except that, the difference between the two systems is mainly this one. They should use organic feed. They can't treat the animal for, they are allowed to treat the animals, I think it's once a year for parasitism or something like that. What else? And they don't use artificial insemination, that's true. And this is subject we work on, not me, but one of my colleagues. And as I told you, François Bocquet was initiated this very, very interesting work, how to prepare, how to mat so this is 100 of animals with sperm, natural fresh sperm, sorry, without using sponges and hormones. And he has developed a special system, electronic system, to detect the female in it, and quickly afterward inseminate the animal. They can't use the insemination, but the organic farm can use the RAM. If they want to concentrate the lambing using the RAM, it must know what female is in it and can be matted. And our colleague François, not yet because he's dead, but my colleague Nathalie Debus is working on this subject, and it's very, very interesting for the organic farm. But we expect that for the common farm, it will be a challenge, because once the people will realize how the animal are matted, are used. We had this about 2 years ago, this big problem with the hormone coming from the horses, the female horses producing in Argentina. It was dramatic at this time, how the animal were managed. And the population say, oh, it's impossible to continue to do that. So once we think that in a few years, we will stop. We will have to stop the artificial insemination, almost using the hormone. So we are working on this subject.
Okay. With regards to artificial insemination, is it only with fresh semen, or can frozen be used?
No, only fresh. Only fresh. My colleague also, Nathalie, is working on this one, but for the time being, it's only fresh. This is also because it's a big challenge for the structure, because they have to produce a lot of semen for the short time, because all the female are ready to be inseminated at the same time. So it's a very strong activity for the organization at this time.
Okay. What is the level of mastitis you normally see in these herds?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's fine. That's fine.
No, they are not. In fact, they are not a lot. They are not a lot, but the level, I would say, a mistake. I don't know.
Okay.
But they are not a lot.
And do you have recommendations on either websites or research or magazines to keep us up to date on sheep nutrition?
If it's in French, yes.
Well, it may be.
No, sorry. We have there are sheep nutrition recommendation in the US, in your country. You have this. You have also let's say. For dairy sheep, they are not so much. Huh? Otherwise, we have this, but it's a big book. There's a book we have produced for the new system, INRAE system, which gather all the species, dairy sheep, dairy cow, beef cow, and so on, and a special chapter for dairy sheep, for the sheep. This is in English. You may find it also in French. Otherwise, we have no no specific book unless the one I show you in slide. We have produced this one. It's slide 50.
Okay. Let's see. I've changed the order. This is not it, is it?
It's a slide with a table. After, I think it's after.
This one?
Yeah, this one.
Okay.
You know, well, this one.
CC.
The small book, we have produced it 2 years ago now, I think. It's all recommendations for the nutrition for dairy sheep.
There.
It has been done with all the technicians. It's on. You know what is interesting. I don't want to advertise my work, but in fact, we did this book with the technician and the researchers also, and what I can say that the experience from the field. And you may find the recommendation for all the system, including using the pasture and so on. If you are interested, I can send you. I think I have put I can send you the reference.
That'll be perfect.
But unfortunately, it's in French. I would ask. I wanted to ask the people to say we have to translate in English because it can be interesting for the others. Otherwise, okay. Well, but in fact, they have no money, they have no CC, they have no this one. So for the time being, it's only in French.
Well, maybe we just need to find some French people that can translate it for us.
Oh, if you find, yes, I would be happy because I think it's interesting work we have done.
Okay, question. Do you face vast problems with diarrhea due to cryptosporidia or other causative factors, and how do you take care of that?
No, I have no experience on this one, on this cryptosporidia. No, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Chloe, I'm sorry. I did not mean to not call on you. Do you have any comments or questions?
Oh, no, not yet. No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Di and Elena, do you?
No,
No,
I'm
thank
okay.
you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I was just so focused on picking away at those questions that I'm afraid I was being a microphone hog. Well, I think that we have reached the end to the questions. Dr. Hassoun, so much thank you. It was terrific to have you join us. As you can see, we had so much interest and so many questions. And thank you, Elena and Hudai and Chloe, of the people who are left, for joining as well to help in this webinar. So unless we get more questions, I will say, let's see, I am missing to know what the questions are. So there's somebody that said, what about these questions? But I do not see them. So
I've seen a question about milk urea, but I think I have answered to it.
Okay, which one was that?
More at the top. Carol, what are your recommendations for interpreting milk urea nitrogen analysis for diet?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Ask if we analyze nitrogen or milk urea. We use directly urea, and with milk urea, the difficulties is to understand that milk urea, it's only the results of imbalance protein versus energy. It's not necessarily too much protein or too low energy. It's just imbalance. You may fit the recommendation for energy and too much provide too much protein. So you will have a high level of urea, as the example I show you. But you may also have a good, you may fit, the protein requirement, But if you provide less energy than necessary, you will have also urea in the milk. So urea in the milk is not always an overfeeding of the animal with protein. It may be it's more imbalance ratio, protein versus energy.
Okay, so some of these questions, I think our listener did not hear your answer. So what do silages affect milk quality for cheese production?
What kind of silages?
I think any type of ensiled forage.
Oh.
Yeah, I think we discussed that, but please repeat.
Well, this was partly with John, with the silages. The problem is how it has been properly stored. In our situation, there are regular analysis on the silages to know if it's correctly or badly preserved. The problem is always the same, not only for the milk, for everything. If it has been done properly in the good condition, you shouldn't have any problem. The problem is if you use silages with contamination with bacteria, or which is not properly used, or the main rule of using silages. But in our situation, the system solved the problem using collecting the milk apart when they come from the farm using silages. So yeah. This milk don't go to produce Roquefort, for example. It will be changed. It will be pasteurized or treated to destroy all the bacteria to produce milk. But in Roquefort, as we use the crude milk, we can't put silages, milk from silages. And we have no special forages not appropriate for silages. It's more than the forages, it's more the stage. To produce a good silage, you must have a lot of soluble glucide to rapidly decrease the pH in the silage. So it's not really a question of the quality of the forage. It is. Some forage are less adapted for silages, I know. But in fact, it's more the stage, physiological stage of the forage to produce a good silage, and also show the condition in which it has been done.
Okay. Question about, I think you've mentioned this, but again, do you use to formulate rations for dairy sheep in France? Can you mention again your system?
Formulation, the dairy sheep, it's quite simple. You take the average sheep of the flock. So you have a number of sheep, you have a total milk production, so you divide one by the other one. So with this, you can obtain the requirement of the animal, the average animal. You estimate the body weight. This is an information which is never known in the farm. And once you have body weight and milk, standardized milk yield, standardized is you must know the protein and the fat content. Once you have those two information, you can calculate the requirement for this average animal. If you want to feed a large group of animals, you have to increase this requirement by 15 to 20% for the energy, and by 25 to up to sometimes 40% for the protein. The difference is because if you want to feed correctly, properly, the high producing ewes, I mean, the ewes that are on the right side of the curve you have seen on the slide, you have to provide a lot of protein. And you may provide less energy because you expect that they will mobilize their body reserves. This is the general system to feed the large group of animals.
Okay. Thank you. I think now we've tackled most of the questions, or all the questions. Again, Philippe, thank you for joining. This recording will be, I will edit out the bad parts, which aren't that many, but just I tend to not let it go just out straight, and then you'll receive notification of the recording at the end. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Marianne. Really, I'm very happy to have done this work. I was a little afraid before, but now
excellent job, and we learned so much. Thank you. Okay, everybody, have a good day or evening. And
last information, Marianne. If anybody is interested about the system, they have my electronic mail at the first slide, and I always answer to the people.
Yes.
So if you want more information about the book or something else, I will answer to the people, even in Spanish.
Okay. All right. Yes, you said you can answer in Spanish. Thank you so much. Okay.
Okay.
Goodbye. Everybody have a good day.
Yeah. Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.